Well, welcome back to the program. My name is Dr. Sock. This is Fresh Air in the Morning. Please join me in welcoming my good friend Emil Lee. Time for a new edition of St.Maarten Insights, news that matters to you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sock. Good morning, listeners. Great to be back again.
We're glad you're here. We're glad. So, what happened yesterday at Council of Ministers?
So, yesterday we had Minister of Justice and Minister of Vromi. Minister of Justice really was more commenting on, I don't know if you noticed in the newspaper, there was a whole discussion about how they're bringing in a set of prison guards from Suriname. So, they made a deal and they're going to help staff up the prison for a year. And so she was explaining, look, there's no jobs that are being taken away or lost. There's still an ongoing recruitment process to hire local prison guards, but I guess they need training as well. So the idea is starting in March, they're going to bring in 14 officers for 6 months, and then they will rotate out, and 13 officers will come after. Um, and apparently, this is actually being funded. So St. Martin has prisoners in Holland,
Mm-hmm.
and they pay Holland money to house those prisoners. And apparently, Holland has agreed to delay payment for a year so that they could use that money to pay to stabilize the prison system. So that's how it's being financed. So, I mean, to be honest, it sounded like a pretty reasonable and sort of fair solution to improving conditions at the prison. So she was just explaining about that, and there's a lot of chat on social media about why from Suriname and what about local jobs, and so
Well, it's because we don't have people that want to. We don't have the we don't have the horsepower, right? We don't have the people that want the jobs.
yes,
Is my understanding,
and
right?
so they're working on it. I think they have. She said I think there's 15 vacancies in the budget for 2026. So they're trying to actively hire 15 people to fill in their gaps at the prison. So um, that's what she was explaining, Minister of Justice. And then Minister of Vromi explained that in the beginning of 2027. So when you're like right now, we're all supposed to be paying our road tax, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you get the little sticker in your window. So by law, that money is supposed to go into a road tax fund.
Mm-hmm.
And that fund is supposed to be what's used to maintain the roads. And so he said, as of January 2027, so next year, that fund will actually be established, and the monies when you pay your road tax will go into the fund, and then that money has to be used for road maintenance, which is a good thing, right?
Right.
So it's dedicated, it's allocated to it.
Okay.
And so he's actually talking about that they're going to put a contract for road maintenance so that you don't have to sort of, um, call somebody to come in and fill potholes. Like somebody should have a contract to keep the roads, you know, I would hope, sort of pothole free and in reasonable conditions. So
Year round.
you're right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not a novel idea.
Yeah. But, as I tried to dig into it, so the question I was asking him is the money that's going to go into the road fund just going to be deducted from your total budget for the ministry? And he was saying yes. He thinks that that's fair. But as I listened again, so I was listening again to the conversation. He was saying they have, I think, 900,000 guilders reserved for the road maintenance, right? But you and I were just doing a little math before. There's roughly 30,000 cars on the island, and at the 161 for the plates, that adds up to something like 4.8 million dollars, not even guilders, right? So
Mm.
I don't think he really understood. Um, my question really is, let's say it's 4.8 million dollars. Are you going to then reduce the ministry's budget by 4.8 million dollars, and then it's only a matter of how you're allocating the funds, whether it comes from general funds or from the road tax itself. So I need to ask a follow up, but from what I'm as I'm connecting the dots, the way I'm understanding it is he will give back the 900,000 guilders that's currently allocated and then use the money from the road tax to maintain roads, which is what we want, right? The 900,000, if that's the budget for road maintenance, clearly isn't enough, right? Because the roads are full of potholes
Yeah.
and not in good condition, right? So that would mean a substantial increase in the amount of money for road maintenance. And so that's what I'm understanding, but I'm going to clarify it again. So I think that's good news. I mean, it's a year later, but still good news. And then the other thing, I don't know if you saw, I think it was in, they were doing a comparison with the number of vehicles that um, are paying the road tax.
Hmm.
And interesting, they said in 2023, there was 34,262, and 2025, 30,160. So that's a drop of what, 4,000 something in terms of number of people paying for plates.
Hmm.
So there's two logical explanations. One is that there's 4,000 less vehicles on the island compared to 2 years ago, which
Doesn't seem to be the case.
if that were the case, we would think traffic would actually be improving, right?
Right.
So that doesn't make sense. Or that compliance is poor and control is equally poor, right? That there's no consequence to not paying your road tax, basically. And so I did, off air, we were talking about it. And, what the Ministry of Justice is saying is, because it's just a sticker, that it's harder to control versus in the past when they used to change the plate, right? So you'd have a whole different license plate, which they said was, easier to see. But, we've been talking about this for a long time now, that you see cars running with only one plate on the back, not even the two plates they're supposed to have. So, for me, they should be pulling over all those vehicles that just have one plate, right? And then you're going to start eventually improving compliance, because the first thing you're going to say is, well, at least, show me your registration, show me that you've paid your road tax, and you have insurance, right? So your compliance would improve if there was actually those checks. So we'll
Well,
see what
and
happens.
what I really struggle with is the fact that we don't have, the minister of, I want to say, finance. I believe it was her
Mm-hmm.
who said that we're going to in 2027 go back to plates instead of stickers because they attribute the drop in revenue um, to there not being new plates, but uh, because when
Visibility.
visibility is easier um, with a plate versus a sticker. Well, I don't know. I just put my new sticker on for 2026 and took off my sticker for 2025. Um, and the stickers are obviously different color, different, just completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so other than that the plate is bigger than a sticker, right? And you could see it from the front and the back. In today's day and age, if I'm doing a control, why can't a police officer who's pulled you over either because it was a regular traffic stop or you did something wrong, if a police officer pulled you over, how come they can't examine your registration and your inspection sticker and your the receipt for your road tax, right physically right there? Or if before they pull you over, before they even walk up to the car, they should be able to look and either run your plate, in other words, look at an app on their phone um, that
It's
shows
interesting. I don't think, because indeed, right? You watch TV, you see in the rest of the world, the police officers have a laptop like
in the car.
right over their gear shift, right? They have
Right.
a laptop there. I don't think the police officers here have that, right? So
I don't think so.
yeah, that's interesting.
But why can't they just run an app, put an app? Why can't there be an app that you give to the police officers that's secure, that operates over a VPN, over their data on their phone,
Mm-hmm.
that simply says, oh, it's plate number I don't even
Yeah.
mine's P3085 is what I got,
Mm-hmm.
right? P3085. Who does this belong to? It belongs to Jeffrey Cochran. He lives at this address.
And there's a warrant out for his
Right.
arrest.
Right. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
all should be in one place, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And he paid his road tax, his inspection. He paid his road tax for 2025 and 2026. Um, and his inspection sticker expires on this day, or on this day and time, so that before they even walk up to the car, they know what they're dealing with,
Right.
and do the documents match. And I'm sorry, in 2026, it is absolutely insane to me to think that we don't have the technology in place to do this. If I can broadcast a radio show from anywhere in the world over a simple internet connection, I have to believe that I know the technology exists to do this. Why we don't have it is crazy. And the fact that I've had the same license plate since I turned 16 in the United States of Connecticut.
Right. They just changed like a little sticker on the plate,
They
right?
don't. They don't even do that in Connecticut. You don't get a sticker anymore.
Oh, yeah. They used to have like a little
sticker,
like a 2-inch sticker that you stuck on the plate, right?
and it showed the month and the year that
Right.
you expired.
They don't even do that
No,
anymore.
they haven't done that in years.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the other license plate my father has had since he was 16 years old in 1950. So, as a matter of fact, there's a Connecticut license plate on the wall
Yeah, I
here.
see it. Okay.
That was my plate, and you can see there's no sticker on it because they did away with it. It just doesn't exist anymore because the police are tied in with the motor vehicle, and they know you've got so many parking tickets, you've got a speeding ticket, you've got you haven't paid your registration fees, or in our case your road tax fees, or your property tax on the vehicle that exists up there that doesn't exist here. It's all integrated, and why in today's day and age we have not done that is
And we say it all the time.
troublesome.
The good thing about being late is that we can just look and see how other people have done this and just copy. You don't need to be smart anymore. You just need to be a good adopter. Yeah.
It's just so. I'm sorry, creating a new license plate every year is just plain. I have a word that I'll use, but I won't use it. Foolish. I mean, it's first of all environmentally unfriendly, a waste of money. You shouldn't even have to have a sticker. Right? You should. The police should just be able. You eliminate the sticker. You buy a license plate. You buy your car. You get a license plate. You register it. It's on the back of the car, the front of the car. Both plates are on. You get pulled over. The police can ring your plate.
Fact is, it's clear. You have a drop in 4,000 numbered plates being paid for. We cannot believe there's 4,000 less cars on the road compared to 2 years ago. You clearly have a compliance enforcement problem. Just,
and changing the plate, isn't going to solve the problem. Put the men in blue on the street to pull people over and see whether they've got their
that's
stuff.
the way it used to be, right? At the end of the deadline for the road tax, you used to have police on the roads all the time.
And by the way, don't do that in the height of season, please. Wait till
that's
after
what
April.
They used to do.
Yeah, but wait till April 15th when things right.
Yeah, you could do that.
We don't need any more traffic holdups. But this is just a ill thought out solution to a revenue problem,
right.
And the fact that they have new license plates every year or not doesn't solve the problem.
Right. So, another topic I brought up with the minister. Again, remember there was this conference about the economy and where we should be going for the
before we do that, let's save that. Let's take a quick commercial break. We'll come right back and we'll talk about all the other things that happened at Council of Ministers. We'll be right back after these messages. Here's your Amstel Bright Entertainment Calendar. Here's everything that's happening tonight. Well, good morning and welcome back to the program. Emil Lee is with us. Next segment of St. Maarten Insights news that matters to you. So tell me, um, there was a conference that was all about.
About how the economy should move forward. This was a couple weeks ago, hosted by TIAT, working towards an economic development plan. And so a couple things came out of it, but one of the themes that has been consistent throughout, and actually you'll see it very often as you monitor social media. They've talked. I think it was in the paper this week about possibility of two more casinos. And if you read the comments, it's just like, isn't it enough? It's just too much. Everything is just like, we've had enough. Where's the limit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked previously the Minister of Economic Affairs, Tiat, and she was a little sort of cagey. And I have to say that I think the Minister of Romy was a little bit non-committal in that he made his opinion clear and he said, look, as a party, we've talked about limiting development. Our focus would be on limiting large development. Um, and he gave a whole explanation. And I said, okay, I really appreciate the fact that you're sharing your opinion, but opinion isn't policy. From a policy perspective, what is it that you're prepared to do? What's your thinking? Because everybody's saying infrastructure has not kept up with development. So either you need to invest a lot more money into infrastructure to bring development up quickly, or you need to sort of look at how do you sort of slow down development to allow the infrastructure to catch up, or you're going to just have this greater gap between infrastructure and development. Again, in this conference, it was interesting. Carl John from the police department was talking about, from a firefighting perspective, and you've had a fire right next door. Apparently, the Simpson Bay area, the water line, I think, is like a 8-inch water line. But as you're putting in more and more units, developments, and the higher that they're getting, there's a question as to if you have, let's say, one of these new buildings in Simpson Bay, they're what, maybe 9 floors tall, something like that, right?
The Ocean Residences, which I think is a very tastefully done building, that is 8 floors.
Okay.
Dulce Beach, which is the other one right on Simpson Bay Beach, is 7 floors.
Okay.
Way more dense in
Yeah.
terms of space, size of the lot, and number of units.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, not as tastefully done. And then you have the hills right over here, which is I don't know how many they are, but those are way they go
That are
way
going up the hill, right?
they're going up the hill. So you got to get lots of water pressure to get.
Exactly. So that's in his presentation during the conference. He was talking about that there's concern as to whether there's sufficient water pressure if you actually had to put out a fire, right? So that the demand on the line it may be too much, especially in those instances. And so, can you imagine Simpson Bay if this area, if you had to change the water lines from, let's say, 8-inch to whatever 10 or 12-inch supply lines? I mean, that's a massive undertaking. So when do you sort of say, okay, wait, we need to invest in this um, before we can approve more developments? You remember our whole GB issue with the electricity supply. A lot of it was based on the fact that when um, Vromi was issuing permits for developments, nobody's coordinating with GB to say, look, we're adding this much electricity demand in the next 5 years. You need to make sure your production schedule also increases to accommodate that increased demand. So it's a question. I mean, I'm not saying that I have the answer, but from government perspective, giving your opinion, great, but that isn't policy. And so I'm going to keep on pushing and saying, okay, look, you have a clear indication. And he said it himself. He says, Emil, I absolutely agree. Infrastructure has not kept up with development. So it's an uncontested fact, right? That infrastructure hasn't kept up. So you need to bring up your infrastructure. What's your plan to bring that in line? And I'm hearing opinions, not policy decisions, and that's an issue.
Well, the simple fact of the matter is, when you look at, the basic components of infrastructure, um, electricity, water, internet, all those are
Road.
road and sewer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or lack of sewer. Um, all of those, scream we need to spend a lot of money to bring things up to speed.
Right.
And it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. Other countries, other islands. I'm skeptical of the word country, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
really a small town.
Mm-hmm.
What are we, 12, 13 square miles? We're a small town. Um, others have figured out how to do this. Once again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to have the the what's a good word? How about the intellectual guts to make the hard decisions?
Well, and he alluded to that, and actually he talked about it. He says, look, if politicians are going to keep on doing things that feel good, that are popular, and not making hard decisions, we there's an issue. But that's kind of what I'm seeing is you're saying, I hear you, I agree with you, but what's the decision that you're making? And that's what I found lacking, and I find that disappointing.
Well, let's hope that the discussions like this, discussions in the community, will encourage our elected officials to make the right decisions
Mm-hmm.
as they do the people's business, because that's their job. That's what we put them
Yes.
there.
And he made a comment. He used a word that I'm not accustomed to hearing. He said, "We need to look at densification." Have you ever heard that? So he said St. Martin as we go forward is going to need to look at going up, being more dense, right? But he's talking about from a residential perspective, right? That we need to have more homes, more places for people to live to accommodate the growing population, the resident population. If you think about it, that's a pretty significant, let's say, vision or let's say policy direction to say we're going to now look at more dense developments, right? So, for example, they bought property in sort of what is it, Belvedere, like on the border to the French side,
Mm-hmm.
right, by Dutch Quarter there. So are you talking now about you're going to build sort of 4 or 5 story apartment style units there to accommodate population? I mean, these are pretty significant
Well, listen,
developmental
and
choices.
if you've done that without the the link, the road link that goes over the hill from the causeway to get there, well, you've just made things even worse.
Well, I'm talking about on my side, down by Dutch Quarter, that area. They're talking about doing. They bought a piece of land,
Right.
and so they're talking about making those developments there.
Same
So
thing though. We need
yes,
we need the road infrastructure. There's one way in and one way out,
for sure.
and whether it's St. Peter's or Dutch Quarter or anywhere else for that matter,
Right,
you've just put stress on the on everything else, right?
right, right. So, and another topic that came up, by the way, was about real estate developments. One of the other journalists was there asked about, how do you prevent these sort of Ponzi schemes that developers come in, according to the journalist, may not even have their building permit in place and start pre-selling units. You had the development here in Coal Bay that that failed as it was going up the hill. I forget the name of the
Yeah.
development, but people put deposits and lost their money. And so, Minister of Justice was explaining, and I know this, that actually by law now, deposits don't go to the developer. If you're doing sort of pre-construction sales,
Hmm.
the deposits actually need to go to the notary, and I think it's a 10% deposit. And in the past, you used to, as the project progressed, you would make additional payments um, based on the progress of the project. And I think, if I remember, by law, that's actually been limited and capped. So, just if there are people who are thinking about investing in pre-development projects, check the law. Talk to the notary, find out what are the regulations about, what deposits you need to put, what rights you have. So, for example, one of the reasons you give it to the notary is it's not a non-refundable deposit, right? There's conditions that both parties need to
Right.
meet, and the notary is the one who regulates to make sure who's defaulted, and that's why you go to the notary, so that they're sort of the arbitrator of where the deposit goes, and if
Well,
somebody
and
defaults, who defaulted. So
well, and I think the other thing that's important to remember is that as you get in bed with a developer, look at the developer's track record.
mhm.
Make sure that they have a successful track record of starting a project, finishing the project, and and then leaving the project, right?
Right.
Because that all makes a huge difference. 8:47 right here in the Northeast Caribbean. Right back with more from Emil Lee. I can't talk this morning. St.Maarten Insights, news that matters to you. Well, welcome back to the program. Just a few minutes left with Emil Lee, St. Maarten Insights, news that matters to you. And so the thing that I keep coming back to,
Mhm.
um, as I think about where we are from an island perspective, especially if you look at this season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unless we are going to make major infrastructure upgrades, roads, power, water, sewer, all internet, telecommunications, all that stuff. It seems to me that when we look at what's in the process of being built and that we need to kind of take a deep breath, let everything kind of finish and move forward with future projects in a smart way. And we
And
need
especially because we have limited land, right? It's
right,
not like we can sort of screw up this neighborhood and say, okay, we'll do the next one better, right? There's no, we don't have those choices.
right, and filling in any more of the lagoon is not an option, right?
Right.
You know, and so it seems to me that I'm a capitalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always have been. He who works the hardest wins.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we have a moral and social and ethical obligations to take care of those that truly cannot take care of themselves,
Right.
not those that just don't want to work,
Right.
or those that have made bad decisions. Right? You make a bad decision, then you have to pay the consequences of your bad decisions. Um, but it seems to me that we need to take some time and put some rules around the way that we move forward, um, and then let the free market take over from there.
I mean, indeed, look at it just like from a personal perspective, right? How many people, I have, you know, associates, business colleagues, friends who take on all these responsibilities, children, work, hobbies, whatever, right? And then they find that they've overextended themselves. And indeed, what do? They take a moment, they self reflect, they take a deep breath and say, okay, let's reassess. What are our priorities? What's really important to us? How do I sort of load shed or, bring things back into perspective? And I think that's really indeed what you're talking about. You need to take a moment and pause, I
You know,
think.
and I think that if if all we did was do a rinse and repeat of this high season every year, given our current capacity, we would so busy. We're reaching our maximum limits
Right.
on what we can handle, and you hear that from the restaurateurs. You just there's just so much. There's just so much volume that you could put through,
Right.
and the silly things that we hear about. Um, just the whole road tax thing, right? It's just a silly diversion for what there are ways to handle that. Let's handle it with smart. Let's stop let's stop creating more problems for ourselves. Let's fix things as we move forward. And because that's government's real job. It's not to run our lives. It's not to be in our business. It's not to overregulate us. It's to set a fair playing
Level playing field.
field
Exactly.
and
Yes.
say, here's the level playing field.
Exactly.
Have at it. That's government's job, not
Right.
to run our lives.
Right.
And I get a sense for that in our environment, we would much have the government run our lives than create a fair playing field.
Right.
And that's just not the way we should move forward.
Right. I agree.
Um,
I agree.
so we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out. The fact that we're actually having this conversation and the fact that you're hearing government start to talk about the problems
So I
is
will
a step
say,
in the right direction.
I will say, and this is where I'm proud of the work that we do, because indeed, very often, what do you have these conferences, um, and then you come with great ideas, and then they go nowhere. And so you need to kind of keep on putting this back into the face of the elected officials to make policy changes. And so far, right, I've asked the Minister of Tiat, the Minister of Vromi, say, look, you had a conference. One of the clear outcomes was that the people feel like it's enough, and we need to figure out how to bring infrastructure development up to par with the amount of people and development that we have. But yet, from both ministers, I still am not hearing that policy shift that turns that concern into reality. And so, I think that's where I'm really proud of the work we do, that we will keep on asking the question. So you say it, but your opinion isn't policy. What's the policy change you're going to make?
And let's push forward and make it all happen and make this the best place to visit in the Caribbean. I already think it is, but let's
And
make it
remember,
even
that's
better.
our saying. Make it the best place to live.
Mm,
And by default, we'll make it the best place to visit.
without a doubt.
Yep.
Emil Lee, always a pleasure to see you, sir.
Thanks.
St. Martin Insights, news that matters to you. I'm going to squeeze one song in before we go to the top of the hour and take care of the marina and tropical weather update. Is always brought to you by our very good friends at K Beach Club and Restaurant. K like character.